Welcome to the Giants Nation Show. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner. I have an interview with Dan Schneier, Big Blue Banter, and CBS Sports. We go for about 40 minutes just breaking down the Giants draft, how we see these players developing, fitting, and we also hit other just, broader topics on the New York Giants as a whole. So that's always a good, we've basically done this after every single draft, have Dan Schneier on as like the first interview when we finish the post-draft mailbag. And he's always a good time to just kind of pick his brain because he's someone who does the pre-draft work the same way that we do over at Big Blue Banter or over there at Big Blue Banter. So again, enjoyable. Going to just do a quick few minutes on what happened at rookie minicamp. I actually think this hasn't been talked about because there's so much Jaxson dart hype coming out of rookie minicamp that I think the biggest news to come out of rookie minicamp outside of the numbers, which I know people like get mad when you talk about numbers, but it's actually something that's like kind of fun to talk about. Mike Kafka was calling the plays at rookie minicamp, and I don't think that is nothing, right? I know we can't fully look into it, and if there was any camp that it wouldn't be that important is rookie minicamp because you're not calling plays for the actual players on the team. Jaxson Dart is basically the only one, in 7-on-7s that is like a lock for the roster because none of the draft picks did, and only the UDFAs and the rookie minicamp invites. So Dable wants to get over and see every position and get a look at guys. So I'm not going to fully look into that, but I feel like the fact that Kafka's calling plays there now makes OTAs. That's the biggest thing we're looking for, right? Like the number one thing going into OTAs at the end of this month. Their first session is May 27th and 28th, and then the 30th. I think usually media is there on the final one of the week, so be there on the 30th. Is who's calling in the plays on the walkie-talkie? Is it Mike Kafka? Because if he's calling them at OTAs, I think you could basically write it and pencil that Mike Kafka will be the play caller for the Giants in 2025, which, by the way, I'm in favor of. If you give it to him, you have to give it to him. No doing what you did in 2023 where you're yanking it mid-game. You're taking over yourself, Brian Dable. You're giving to Shea Tanner. You got to let him get it. But I just feel like the Giants' offense under Brian Dable has worked the best when you see it that is his vision conceptually. But Mike Kafka is the one that's the kind of layering plays together. I think he's good at throwing those tendency changers out there. I just feel like he has a better feel for sequencing, at least with Brian Dable as a head coach. If Brian Dable's job was just as an OC, maybe he'd be better. But again, a head coach's job is much more than calling plays. So I'm a fan of it, and it's now become my you go into OTAs on what to watch for, and it's really not that much, and you get the information that you're looking for on the first day. I remember Bobby Okereke or Xavier McKinney, who's wearing the green dot, stuff like that. It now becomes who is calling plays. Is it Mike Kafka or Brian Dable? So we'll see when we get there. NFL schedule release is out this week, so that'll be interesting to look at. We're going to do the 53-man roster prediction on Friday's episode. We're gonna have Grump on for that. The Giants did sign an undrafted a rookie minicamp invite. They signed cornerback TJ Moore out of Mercer. Gonna wait for Grump on Friday to break him down as a player and watch his film and do that together. But they also brought back little Jordan Humphrey, who was released by time the last episode came out, and now he's brought back. And then they waived two of the UDFAs they signed, and Idaho safety Tommy McCormick, and then Wisconsin quarterback R.J. Delancey. I didn't really like R.J. Delancey very much. McCormick was one who's like a fun player to watch, maybe makes it the specials, but I didn't have big projections for him. So I'm fine seeing R.J. Delancey. I would love to see Tommy McCormick get a shot in camp and do some things on special teams. But TJ Moore had 7 interceptions last year for Mercer. I got some film against him versus Alabama, so I'll get to see him against big school competition. So I'm excited to get into that film, and we'll get back to you on Friday about that. Other than that, I mean, Jaxson Dart did well in the 7-on-7s, at least from what the reports are. His first one completion was to Jermaine Terry, the UDFA out of Oregon State, which is one of those, like, remember it. Ryan Dunleavy posted it, and I was texting him about it, is just remember the name, right? That's a trivia. That's, you're writing a story, hopefully, about how successful Jaxson Dart is. And started with a pass to Jermaine Terry out of Oregon State. And you interview Jermaine Terry for, 2 lines in a New York Post article. So we're going to get into this interview. Again, Jaxson Dart, glad he did good in the 7-on-7s. It's not really anything to make much out of. But it is exciting just having a rookie quarterback, a first-round rookie quarterback. It's like, oh, man, this is a fun feeling, no matter what your pre-draft thoughts of him were. Before we get into this interview, this episode is brought to you by Heath Riles Barbecue, home to award-winning rubs, seasonings, sauces, glazes, marinades, and injections. Created by 79-time barbecue grand champion Heath Riles. These products are trusted by pitmasters and backyard cooks alike for bold flavors and winning results. This ad actually may be a lie. And Heath Riles was like, "What did you just say?" I think they may have won another contest since the last time that they sent me over this ad copy. I think it might be 80 time, but maybe it's still 79 time. It's a different competition, but they definitely won a competition in the last 2 weeks. I follow their YouTube channel. So go check them out. I put the Cajun stuff on everything. We're gonna make wings this weekend. This weekend you got lemon pepper buffalo. You got Parmesan garlic. Regular buffalo seasoning. I mean, you got everything. So make sure you go to HeathRilesBarbecue.com. That's HeathRilesBBQ.com or find them in over 15,000 retailers nationwide, including Walmart, Kroger, Academy Sports, Shields, Lowe's, Publix, Ace Hardware, and more. To find a store near you, just use the store located feature on their website, or again, just order it. That's the easiest way, and the links are all in the description. So I went to Ace on Friday and to pick something up, and I saw oh, there's Heath Riles. I was like, let me just grab one, just so I'm like, you know what, there's a sale for you due to the Giants Nation show. And the cashier's like, "Oh, I love that stuff. I use it all the time." And I was like, "Yeah, they actually are a sponsor of my show, and we got to flex the muscles a little bit at the cashier at Ace Hardware." So whether you're dialing in flavor for your next barbecue competition or you just want to impress at your next cookout, Heath Riles Barbecue has you covered. Grill with confidence, season like a pro. Get 10% off your next order at HeathRilesBarbecue.com with promo code GiantsNation10 at checkout. You'll be glad you did. We started doing a little thoughts of planning the 4th of July party this past weekend, and Heath Riles Barbecue is going to be a big part of that. You'll be glad you did. And here's Dan Schneier. All right, we now welcome on Dan Schneier of Big Blue Banter, CBS Sports. Annual tradition. We have you on a couple of weeks after the draft and really go through the entire roster. Now you guys do all 22 films, so there's obviously a similar dynamic of what we're trying to do. Dan, first, welcome on. I felt like just putting you right in the fire with what is Jaxson Dart going to be in 3 years, but how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's that time of year where we're slowing down a little. I think everybody realizes that. You can see it from the views on some of the videos we put out, and I'm sure you're feeling that same way. We're getting to that lull, but it was fun to get through what we got through. And if I'm going to be honest, this is my favorite draft class that this regime has had. And I would have to go back really, really far to feel like there was one that I felt as strongly about after the draft. That doesn't always mean it's going to work out, but it sure means I'm going to be excited after the fact. And I did want to start the show, Bobby, by just saying, congratulations to you, man. It's been awesome to see what you've been able to do on your own. It really is. And I'll say this, look, you've built an excellent brand for yourself. And I think that's pretty clear by one, how many people have flocked to your content. And you could just see it from the subscriber base in these videos. But I want to be clear. It's not just that you've built a brand. You put in an insane amount of work. I'm looking through your page. Last night I went back and I watched 2 of your dart breakdowns and I watched a few of your other film reviews. Since the draft, you've basically done film reviews on every single player they drafted, the UDFAs, and already you found a way to get to 3 games of dart. I know from doing this on the side with Nick, a big mentor, this shit takes a lot of time. It takes an insane amount of time. And I think about it from the standpoint of this. When I was growing up as a kid, I was that person watching these videos, but we didn't have those. So I was that person looking for content. I was a diehard fan, and my dad put me onto Big Blue Interactive. At that time, when I was a kid, Bobby, I was 12, 13 years old. That's all we had. And if you were a feverish fan like myself or those who listen to this show right now and are listening, you went there every day. And those people, whoever they were, the people on the board, provided that content. Now you're providing that content for the people. So that's what it's all about to me. We're all in this together. We're all diehard fans. We all have this sick, weird obsession with this team. And the amount of work you put in has been really awesome. And one final thing I do want to say that I appreciate, I don't know who it is and what family member it is, but after we did the show, when you came on our show, we had Nancy Skinner. Is that your mom?
Yeah, that's my mom. My mom is now fully involved in the show now.
She's awesome because she showed up on like 5 Big Banter videos after the one we did, just like supporting Big Banter. You guys are awesome. I was just like, this is
She shared it on Facebook. So
great.
the dynamic went from me basically having to explain what I do, like every time I talked about work with them for 6 years. So now my family's just all in on everything.
Okay.
So they know what the word algorithm means for it now. Like they're just all bought in on it.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah, she shared your guys' podcast on Facebook with me, Sean Marash's podcast with
No,
me
but
on
she also then
Facebook.
came back to like videos you weren't even on and on our page and just like showing support for,
Oh
for
yeah,
you guys.
she likes and subscribes. I've had to tell my family like clicking on for 1.5 minutes actually does more damage
Yeah.
to the fall off time.
Right.
But listen to the last 5 minutes. But no, it's been good. My whole family's been on board with it, and it's been exciting.
It is.
This is, I think it's like the amount of content we're putting out is like, oh, this is Bobby new. It's like, no, this is what it's always been. It's just
Right.
now the Giants have a quarterback, so these plans I've had for if they drive a quarterback for years are now finally coming to fruition a little bit. And you know what's it's you know what? I told myself I wasn't going to start with quarterback. I want to start with the defense as a whole, and then we could get to Jaxson Dart. The defense has added starters / serious contributors to this unit. Abdul Carter in the draft, Darius Alexander, even if he's not starting, he's going to be playing a significant role from day one, I believe. Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland, two high money DBs. Roy Robertson Harris or Jeremiah Ledbetter would probably get some playing time on the front. This defense was 21st in scoring last year, 24th in yards, and 29th in EPA per play. It was a below average unit. And we saw, X's and O's. We saw kind of a pretty simple cushion cover 1, cover 3 scheme where they like to stun up front, right? So they rack up some sacks against bad offensive lines. What do you see this defense being and the dynamic that it can be? Because you look at the names and what they can do, and it looks like something a defensive coordinator would love to just become the most creative defensive coordinator in the NFL with.
You would think that any defensive coordinator would like to inherit this group and this talent, but I try to channel back to like what Nick and I did right when they hired Shane Bowen from Tennessee, which is break down his film and look at specifically the year where they had the #1 ranked defense. I think it was scoring defense. Now you go back and you don't know exactly who was more responsible for that, him or Vrabel. There's a lot of talk about that. It's hard to say, but you can look at the tape and glean from what they were doing. And the key to me is that he felt comfortable with the safeties he had to do different things on the back end. Will that be the case this year with Holland and Nubin? I hope so. I think in general, both Nubin and Banks will benefit from another year in the system and just different things they can do with that in mind. But I also think about what he did on the edges. Like we know he loves to run wide and 9. We know he loves to have those guys up on line of scrimmage, but he dropped a lot of those edges there. And I feel like with Carter specifically, and he did it with Gavon a little bit last year, and Burns can do it as well, and he did that as well. But with Carter specifically, that's where I'm considering he can get the most creative. I'm just thinking about all the tape I watched of Carter at Penn State, specifically that game against Illinois, where he was essentially just closing out the game as the spy in the A gap and basically saying, look, you're not going to have this option. And I consider some of the Giants' opponents, right? Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, 4 times a year. That's not something any of us look forward to. But one big factor in what made those offenses work for both of those teams last year was the scramble. And that's something I think Carter specifically will have a key role in stopping. If it was me and I was defensive coordinator of the Giants in those games, I would probably have Carter lined up a lot of snaps over the A gap or B gap and just have him working as that spy and just somebody who can not only, watch the quarterback, but get into those shallow zone areas and get his hands up. We saw him do that as well at Penn State. So I think the areas of the players he can get the most creative with are going to be Holland, Nubin, and Carter. But we're going to have to see, because I also wonder, and obviously like at this point, every coordinator is running like pattern match defenses, but I wonder how much man coverage he's going to play with those corners, because it seems like they fit that better. So we'll have to see what he does on that end, but I'm really looking forward to how he uses Carter and those 2 safeties.
And it depends what type of man coverage, because I think cover 1 was like his most used man coverage, but they were never really pressing up or anything. And it ends up looking like cover 3 if they're on the vertical. Like there's different types of man coverages. there should be no like Shane Bowen should have this unit good again. And if Dexter Lawrence gets injured and then Paulson Adebo gets injured, then yeah, we're having a different conversation here. But me and you both watch film. I'm sure we both, whenever we're bored and in church or whatever, and have a notepad in front of us, you start thinking about drawing up plays or something, right? On offense, it's just these are the concepts you run. On defense, man, there's so many different million different things you can disguise a different coverage or drop this guy player. I feel like this defense should be, at the very worst, the word creative, which I think is overused sometimes whenever we don't like something. Is like it's not creative enough, but it should be creative. You have a corner who gets his hands on the football and Paulson Adebo. Allow him to cheat. He doesn't just do that by playing standard man coverage. They allow him to cheat in that Saints defense to take chances. So allow him to cheat with the safeties. Two versatile safeties. Have them dealing a ton. Abdul Carter. Right, and I do believe they will do this with Abdul Carter if you watch any of that Giants Life that just came out, where they're like, you're going to have to play all 5 positions. And he's like,
Right.
well, add more, right? I'm going to play some stack linebacker too. Like, we know they're going to do that with him, but more than just, stunting on the front, right? I can't wait. I cannot wait for the first 3rd and 11 where you have Dexter Lawrence and Abdul Carter in both A gaps, Kayvon and Brian Burns lined up wide, and then fill us the rest with how you want to do. So that's my hope is, again, how good or whatever rankings we get, be creative in what you are, because you still have some unproven players. Like the run game, I still think is going to be a huge question mark. Deonte Banks at corner 2. You look at the stats that he gave up as a corner 2 versus corner 1, and they're basically the same. He's just lost the rookie shine, and didn't face as many wide receiver ones in his rookie year. Like that's not a guarantee. Drew Phillips, got his hands on the football 1 time. Same with Tyler Newton. So there's still like question marks on this defense, but at the very worst, they have smart players who you can get really creative with, and those star level players like Dex, Brian Burns, and then hopefully Abdul Carter, and then the good players like Adebo, Karate, and Holland.
I feel like we could get it, and you just brought this up. I feel like we can get into a spot with Dallas early where you got rookie Tyler Booker there on the line, and you have Carter lined up in a spot where he can just beat him over and over again in the passing game. Not to, Booker was a player I liked, I think, more than you did. Nick and I were high on him, and I understand why they draft him for that scheme. But I think there could be a little bit of a learning curve if he has guys like Carter lined up in that gap and just kind of terrorizing him. But I am definitely happy you brought up the run defense because I do not feel fully comfortable with where that's at. I understand by the numbers, Darius Alexander was a very good run defender at the college level, PFF grades, the run stops. But I also think some of that had to do with how they used him there. And I also think some of that had to do with the level of play in the competition. I understand he had a good Senior Bowl week. That still doesn't feel like an automatic fix. I feel like if they had Alfred Collins, I would feel a lot more comfortable about where they're at. I prefer Alexander to Collins overall, but just in that regard. And I still feel like with these linebackers, like they're they're similar skill sets to me in this defense. Like I felt like Okereke fit Wink Martindale's defense so much better than he fits this one. And in this defense, I almost feel like he should play more the position he played with the Colts. We don't have that luxury. So we kind of are in this position where those are the guys. But I do think that personally, I do think that having Holland in there over Pinnock is going to make a massive difference in the run defense. I felt like Pinnock was a culprit for a lot of just some of their mistakes in the run game.
Yeah, so let's talk about like the Darius Alexander. You brought him up. He is someone who can penetrate penetrate a gap, can use quick hands, and sometimes was able to really bring some power. Even though I thought I only saw that more so against the smaller competition.
Yep.
And really legitimately shined at the Senior Bowl to where you have first watches after the Senior Bowl. He was mine. I date every write up I do. His was the Sunday after the Senior Bowl, the first guy I watched. And there were some like again, I thought double teams in the run game really drove him back. I thought he got pinned down quite a bit. And then the pass rush wasn't as elite as what I was hoping against smaller competition again, but also like you said, they had him playing a different role there. He wasn't just
Right.
get upfield, and we'll have a different role as a 3 tech with Dexter Lawrence as the nose and those guys as edge. What do you think he looks like early on in his career for the Giants?
I think you pretty much nailed it, Bobby. I'm more confident that they see a vision for him as a pass rusher than as a run defender based on what you said, how they used him. So my early vision for him, because I was thinking about it like you were talking earlier about, yeah, we didn't really see much from Bone last year. We saw he likes to stun his D line. He really is aggressive with how he uses defensive linemen. And that I think is part of the reason the run defense suffered at times. So I think early career for Alexander, it's more of just that pass rushing role, maybe passing downs. I'm hoping he can come in on the rundowns early. That I think remains to be seen. We'll see how it goes in camp and preseason. But what I would look for as a Giant fan is early on, he's making those plays in the passing game as a pass rusher more so than as a run defender.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be an early contributor, which is a
Same.
endorsement of him, but it's also a bad endorsement of the rest of the defensive tackle group where they paid Roy Robertson Harris. I like Jeremiah Ledbetter better.
Same.
Right. And going into the draft, I thought Jeremiah Ledbetter was the second best defensive tackle on the team. That's not a good spot to be in. You know who my comp for him is, and you'll like this. It is Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
quick, can move hands. The run game isn't as good as you want. But you can see how he can get much better in that area. I feel like that was my comp for him, and he's become like a pretty solid player for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. He's made plays. He played a little bit of a different position at Wisconsin than he played at it with the Steelers. So it's kind of interesting. They saw something in him. Clearly, the Giants see something in Alexander, in my opinion, at least that isn't essentially here's what he did at college. This is what he'll do at the NFL. I think they see something different for him.
Let's talk about the quarterback now. Now we got enough defense to talk, and I'm sure we'll get back to it. I understand that Jaxson Dart isn't going to play. I've been told a million different times to develop. What are the things that he really that you see he needs to develop while sitting?
So here's my thing. I first want to get into this discussion with you, Bobby. There's so much we can talk about when it comes to Dart or quarterbacks or the position. But I understand it worked with Jordan Love. I understand, I guess, quote unquote, it worked with Patrick Mahomes, though I kind of feel like Mahomes would have worked regardless. But I don't really know if I buy into the idea that you can really develop as a quarterback watching. I know again, I get it happened with Love, quote unquote. But what are you doing, right? There's limited practice reps. There's even more limited reps during the season. You're really doing nothing in my mind. I guess you're watching, you're in the meetings, and you're just seeing how a quarterback goes about his business. And maybe you're getting those mental reps in. But ultimately, I am kind of the belief, Bobby, that as long as your offensive line, which we'll get to later, is solid, you really learn by playing and by seeing things. So I don't necessarily, maybe I'm not the best person to ask for this question. I'm not entirely sure. So I'd be curious if you have thoughts on what you can learn from sitting and why this sometimes works for guys like Love or whoever.
Well, again, sometimes you think of it as the fundamentals, and I don't think it needs a ton of work on the fundamentals. He kind of fades away on some throws, but that's not something that needs to be drilled in for an entire year. His footwork isn't atrocious. You'll see sometimes where it gets sloppy on an RPO, but sometimes that's somewhat of a product of that scheme where it's you gotta get that ball out to that free access hitch quick, and you'll see him miss high and wide a couple times. And then on the deep ball, I feel like it just around 50 yards, it starts fading to that inside shoulder and dies out a bit, right? I don't think those are huge major. For me, it would be the regular down quick game NFL offense, because he hasn't run any of that. And it'd be just drilling that. And, I guess you would go with, what Mike Kafka did with Patrick Mahomes. He was the assistant QB coach with the Chiefs. It's just basically that becomes your job, is developing and growing this player. And for the Giants, that would be Christian Jones, who's been with them for a while. Just developing him, working, obviously on the fundamentals. But I think it'd be the quick game passing offense, because you don't have an NFL quick game passing offense at Ole Miss.
Right.
And when you are running more quick game stuff, the way defenses play to Ole Miss, it's just not realistic to what an NFL defense is going to be, right? I thought you saw some of the most creative defenses playing Ole Miss, because it's we can't just line up and play this. We got to, Tennessee. I was watching. Who was I watching? Oh, I was watching Oklahoma. Because I was watching Trace Ford, the UDFA, and he had 12 snaps of stacked linebacker. Actually, you know what? That was Tennessee. Never mind. Anyways, moot point. But teams had to do different things for that. So it'd be kind of just working that quick game offense, and learning that, right? Not going to be a ton of on-field action on that besides running scout team. So that's kind of what it would be for me, is just kind of learning an NFL offense, getting the mental reps on it. Because I don't think it's not like a Jordan Love or Mahomes where you need all this crazy like fundamental stuff to be cleaned up. It's more of just learning what an NFL offense is because that's not what Ole
Yeah.
Miss offense was.
I completely agree with what he needs to improve on, and I could go into further detail on that. It's just to me like, how does that improve from watching it? I guess it worked with Mahomes with that Kafka plan. I almost feel like with Love, like I'm not even sure at times he's fully fixed a lot of those issues that he had coming into you. I just don't think it matters anymore at times, like from the footwork standpoint. And I just think maybe it's because of what you said. He found a way to pick up the offense faster, maybe by sitting and learning. I just remain skeptical. Like personally, I feel like you need to see it, you need to play it. But there's plenty of things that from watching his tape that I think he needs to improve on. You brought up a bunch of them. I think one thing with Dart is he needs to trust what he sees a lot more often. And this was something I had a problem with before the Giants even draft him. It does feel like a lot of the times, if he trusts it and he sees it, he's really accurate. Like he can make that ball go to where it needs to go. And there are times where he trusts that sail concept, and you did a great job breaking this down in the 3 games you put up. And he'll just fire that into space with great anticipation in my mind and where the receiver is going to be rather than where he is. Same thing on the Mills concept. I think he throws a great post pattern. Like he'll put that ball out and in front and it drops in. But then there are times I watch where he doesn't trust it, and he's either going to put his head down and run, or he's going to come back to the running back, or it feels like he just gets back to wherever it would be, even on sometimes when he does come back to the running back, and the throw is just less accurate. I don't know if that's because, like, at least the ball placement, I don't know if that's because he's rushing his process a little bit, and when it's not like right there for him pre to post snap, and he can kind of feel it out and feel comfortable with it. I don't know what that is, so maybe that's something Kafka can work on with him as he sits, like just feeling more comfortable working through your progression.
Yeah, again, I just think there's a lot of like mental, like
Yeah.
not just learn the playbook in like a brand term, but like learn these concepts and what you're looking to get out of it and what you're reading. Because again, they didn't run much of it at Ole Miss. The aggressive passing concepts are the ones you find in the NFL. Sale, Mills. They
Just
didn't
with a lot
really
less
get.
space to work with.
Yeah, again, but it's like he understands what we're looking for
Yeah.
and those concepts, right? And you even see them put the backside dig on it, which I feel like he did a bad job getting to.
Yeah.
But like he understands what you're trying to get out of that. Where I'm working on the Georgia Southern breakdown. And they run a trail concept on 3rd and 3. And there's one player you're really reading on that. He just pre-snap, drop backs, throws it, and it gets broken up by the linebacker. So it's just kind of learning what you're reading off of and getting to that because they didn't really do much of it. That's what I would be working on. But I mean, what did I think me and you had similar views on Dart pre-draft. I don't really feel like going into compensation and all that. Like, what is your projection overall for Dart?
He's an interesting projection, obviously, because there are physical traits that I like about Dart that clearly Brian Dable likes about him, and we'll get into some of those. But I do want to touch on one thing you mentioned. You talked about the deep ball, and I'll get into that what your question is in a second. But you talk about the deep ball, and I noticed that as well. Like there were times where the ball would either just fall to the inside or kind of die on him. I wonder, and I don't want to bury your question, but I did want to ask you this as you were going over this. In your mind at all, does it factor in that because he's only 21 years old, he can potentially grow into his frame, get stronger in the lower half? Because I read something last year with Joe Burrow, who talked about when he had that wrist injury, he's like, I got to find a way to generate power again, and I'm going to do it through getting more of my body into the ground, my lower half, and really planting and driving from my legs and from my base and my core. I feel like I wonder if that's something that can develop like over a year, just being in an NFL training program to get more on those kind of throws. Because I do feel like he has fine velocity in intermediate areas and in the short areas of the field. But I also feel like mostly he wins through touch in those areas. And I wonder like if there's more meat on the bone for him from a just throwing power standpoint.
I mean, he's never going to be like the off your back foot, rip it
Yeah, yeah, no.
65 yards type of thing. Um, like he's again, there's guys who have that arm talent in the NFL, and there's guys that don't, and he's not one, but I still think he's like in that second tier of arm. Like my arm talent comparison, even overall talent, is Dak Prescott, right? Which is a guy finished second in MVP 2 years ago.
Okay.
So like that's kind of, and again, have we ever talked about Dak not being able to make throws? No.
No.
But I do think he can get better, right? Like again, one is just not fading away off of some of these balls. And you do see like some it's a really aesthetically pleasing ball, right? There's some dimes in there that you really like. It's just I consistently saw it starting to die out around 50 air yards, which again, like that's you're drafting him for his aggression, right? If it's like, why does Brian Dable like him? It's that aggression. It's throwing the ball 20 plus air yards 22% of the time, which is the most out of any QB over the last 3 years, or first round quarterback over the last 3 years. And those Mills concepts and stuff, you got to have some talent to make those throws. There's not just basic NFL arm talent. So I do think he'll get better on it. It's just art again. Not every throw is being thrown 65 yards down the field and all that, right? We look at the longest air yard completions every year, and it's not as much as you think, but having that ability really can open up some stuff underneath, right? The fact that Josh Allen can throw that Mills concept the way that he can allows him to forget the dig underneath. It allows him to get the third level of it. So that's kind of my take on it.
And I think with that, and again, I'm beating around the question. I just want to get this in, then I'll talk about the things I liked about him on tape. But I think with that in mind, Bobby, because I agree with you on that, he probably has to become a quarterback that sees it really well. Because I do think he does a great job, like I said earlier, when he sees it, he does a great job of throwing with anticipation, leading the receiver and letting him run under it. And that's some of the ways, honestly, that Tyrod Taylor had the #1 explosive pass rate in 2023 in that short sample size of Giants. It wasn't him dropping back like Josh Allen, sitting in the pocket and then firing off his back foot. It was kind of those 3-step, 5-step drops, and mostly those 3-step drops where he diagnosed the pre-snap and put the ball out in space. It's a lot of how Russell Wilson, by the way, had the #1 deep ball rate last year with the Steelers. It wasn't all just Russell Wilson on these 7-step drops hanging back there. So that to me remains to be seen. I hope he sees Dable's offense well. We'll see that development goes. I think we both agree we didn't learn too much from the Ole Miss offense as far as the processing goes. But as far as what I liked about him when I saw on tape, I'll start with just some of the physical stuff that I liked about him. The first thing that I noticed that I really liked about him, and this is a big one for me, is he has the baseball background, played shortstop and third base, and you can see it in how he throws a football. To me, that is so important. Look, I know I'm not trying to bring this guy up, but we just had a quarterback who had that over-the-top throwing motion. I saw it with Shedeur Sanders too. I thought JT O'Sullivan did a great job breaking this down. When you have that over-the-top throwing motion, you're trying to generate power by going up, and it is really hard to generate power. It's really hard to change your arm angle. When you have the 3/4 motion that Cam Ward has, and I think in some ways that Jaxson Dart has displayed he has, you're generating a lot of your power from your core and from your rotation. I don't want to bring this up on the show, Bobby, because I know you fucking hate this sport, and I don't know if we're allowed to curse. I apologize for that. But as somebody who loves this sport and felt
You're allowed to curse. You can't bring up baseball though.
oh no, it's a sport you hate way more. As someone who just fell in love with this sport, it's in golf. It's like in golf if you tried to just move your swing back straight and swing through the ball. You could probably start to get good at making contact with the ball, but it wouldn't really go as far. You're taking away 20 or 30 yards of distance. You need to rotate your body through the throw. And I think that, I think that Dart does a pretty damn good job of that, especially when he's moving to his left. I saw some really good throws off platform to his opposite shoulder. But in general, I think that also allows him to get the ball out faster. That's the second thing I noticed about him when I was watching his tape is he doesn't have that long gathering process. To me, I feel like when I've been watching a lot of Giants football over the last 6 years, it's this long process from getting the football to getting into your drop, to getting the ball out, then releasing the ball to where the ball goes to the receiver. All that time that it takes, you don't have that in the NFL. That kills plays. But I feel like Dart, there are a lot of plays I watched where he sees it pre-snap, he confirms it post-snap, and it's there those times, and he can just get the ball out to his receiver and put it out there, which to me maximized yards after the catch on a lot of these plays. So from those two standpoints, those are things I look for in a quarterback, and I really like those. And then as far as just like the actual throwing of the football, I think he does a great job of putting touch on the ball. It's not a flat football. I've always said this. Nick brought this up with Daniel Jones a lot. Like Jones threw a very flat ball. Like we can all remember that play against Washington like 3-4 years ago with Darius Slayton running wide open, and the ball just kind of throws really flat and hard at him, and everyone's mad at Slayton. It is a drop. He should have caught it. But at the same time, like he was running 15 yards open, and if the ball just went up and down, he can easily run under that for an easy touchdown. I think Dart does a good job of throwing the football that goes up and down. And that's why you see him a lot of times. And you've done a great job breaking this down in your film review. You see a lot of the times he'll get it over that second level defender and he'll put it in between that third level defender and it'll go up and down and it'll drop right in. I think he does a great job with the tight end outs on that. I think he does a great job with the sail concept like you broke down. Some of the things he likes to do. Another thing I really like about Dart is I don't think his accuracy and ball placement wane that much when he gets hit. My favorite rep of Dart on all the film I've watched is a rep that you just broke down on your Wake Forest film review. It's the Mills concept. He's in the pocket. The DT beats the guard. He knows he's going to get clobbered. And not only does he get the football perfectly out to the receiver, I think he drops it. It was like right at the top of the
Juice
sand.
Wells dropped it. Yeah.
Juice Wells drops it. But not only does he get the ball out with good enough velocity and good ball placement, he leads the receiver to the point. He doesn't throw to where the receiver is. That's so important to me as well. And then the fourth thing I really like about watching Dart is what I just said earlier. I think that he does a good job of understanding space and seeing it. And that's such a natural thing for a lot of these quarterbacks. Do you understand that you have to throw the ball not where the receiver is right now, but where he's going to be and let him run under that freaking football? And I think he does a good job of that for the most part, all areas of the field.
Yeah, one thing I think we'll need to see from, because like you said, while getting hit, he makes no throws, he no fear, is figuring out pocket manipulation within that, because those are two separate things. I mean, how we saw that with DJ as a rookie. I remember him just getting lit up and just no fear delivering throws while he's getting just blasted by Nate Solder's responsibility. But it's just like that pocket feel, because there was, I think it was the Wake Forest game as well, where they ran these like 18-yard deep curls. And he's got some pressure, and it's like just sidestep and throw, and instead he's sidestepping and taking 2 steps forward, and the ball ends up being late. So
Right.
those are types of things he needs to get better at. And like you said, eventually he's going to have to play to really grow. But if year one, I'm just kind of trying to teach him an NFL playbook and what we're trying to get out of each play, and showing Russell Wilson may not be
And
the
those
best
examples you
for
brought up,
game, but still.
no, I know what you're saying, but those examples you brought up are a great point of what we were saying or what I mentioned before. Like those plays where he takes that extra hitch, if he just trusts what he sees, he can make that throw physically. So maybe and that's how he's going to have to win. He's going to have to see Dable's system and what he designs for him really well and get the ball out on time. Obviously, that goes for any quarterback for the most part, except for like the free quarterbacks. But it'll be interesting to see if that's something he can do while learning behind the scenes. I am personally not as opposed as others are to him playing this year, but that's a whole nother discussion that will go down the barrel of at some point if it ever comes up.
If the Giants start winning games, I want to see him the last month of the season, because
Yes.
even if it goes terrible, it's not enough to ruin a guy's confidence.
Well, what about this? If the Giants' offensive line is playing fine, let's say average, like or a little bit, I thought it was above average for the Thomas injury last year, at least in pass protection. I think it definitely was. And the defense is dominating, but they're losing football games. Does that come into consideration then that you would play him?
I think they'd go to Jameis first.
Probably.
I really think they will. I think they want to. Now again, it's no telling with this organization. They went from, they benched DJ and went straight to DeVito. They kept DeVito in over Tyrod Taylor. Like, so you never know.
They went to DJ early.
And everybody's saying that in the now. But I promise you, if we are our usual 2-7, I don't think many people are like, we need to go to Jameis now. I think most people are like, I want to see Dart. I want to see Dart. Which I might fall into that category as well too. But you brought up Russ. Let's talk about the offense and Russ as a whole, because that is the guy who's going to be starting week 1. The Giants did upgrade at QB with Russell Wilson in 2025. He played 1 more game than DJ, had 8 more touchdowns, 2 less picks, and 18 more yards per game. So he is an upgrade. With that being the really only addition on offense, what does that upgrade lead to you on an offense that was bottom 2 last year with a QB who isn't top half of the NFL and Russell Wilson?
Yeah, so this is where we're going to get into. I'm going to take a lot of flack for this. I know I'm a lot more optimistic on the Giants this year than most will be, maybe even than you, Bobby. And I might be wrong on that, but the 2 reasons I'm most optimistic are I have a higher opinion and projection for the offensive line than most do, and I have a higher opinion and projection for the quarterback than most do. And I'm not sitting here right now telling you I think Russell Wilson is going to be a star, but I am sitting here and telling the people listening that I think that both Daniel Jones and Drew Lock held this offense back more than people realize, and it was palpable when you watch the tape. It was hard to even get around. Now, why do I think Russell Wilson will help to upgrade, even though I'm not a huge fan of what he brings at this point? A lot of it to me is just understanding the quarterback position. So, for example, like Russell Wilson last year, all of the advanced stats on the deep passing, best in the NFL in some regards, right? The production, best in the NFL in some regards, or at least top 2, top 3. How did it happen? All you really had was George Pickens as a deep threat. It happened because, in my opinion, he understands and sees the position differently than some other quarterbacks. Because I went back and watched a lot of that Steelers tape. It wasn't just him, coming off a play action on 5 and 7 step drop, sitting in a pocket, and then hitting something deep. A lot of the times it was those plays that Tyrod hit during the 2023 that, again, led to his #1 explosive rate in the NFL over that sample size. It was 3-step drops, understanding pre-snap what you have, and hitting that ball right away and putting it out into that space where the receiver can run into. So I think he's going to bring that to the Giants right away. And the Giants will have those looks. They've had those looks for the last 6 years. They just don't always take them. So I think immediately we're going to be a better deep passing team with Russell Wilson. The rest of it gets interesting, right? Like, are we going to be able to throw rhythmic passing game in breakers over the middle, out breakers? I don't really know. I don't think so with Russell Wilson at this point. But a lot will depend on, can this offensive line take a step forward, in my mind, at least in the run game? Because even last year, Bobby, when I thought the offensive line played well at the beginning of the season,
Like an run duo.
exactly. It wasn't necessarily the run game. It was more so in the passing game and the pass protection. And I don't necessarily know if I fully feel totally confident that Runyon, JMS, and GVR, or even if it's Evan Neal, are going to be able to generate what I'm looking for in the run game up front. Even Jermaine Illuminor, to me, better pass protector than run blocker. I know they love Chris Manhertz, and Nick Vlado's like the biggest Manhertz fan ever. That's great, and he helps in the run game. But how many snaps is he going to get with, obviously, Theo Johnson having the role that he have? And I like Theo Johnson as a blocker, but I don't think he's totally there yet. So to me, if they're not generating that in the run game, this offense could struggle. It could be an offense that is a little bit better, but not enough better last year. But again, I just think there are moments on film with Russ where I'm like, yeah, he gets it, he sees it, and he puts the ball out there in space for these receivers outside the number specifically. And those plays alone should help the Giants.
Yeah, it's like even his bad years in Denver, he was like a top 5 deep passer in the NFL. Like that's the one thing I'm confident that they're going to get, which they have not gotten. There was good efficiency a couple of years in there with DJ, but always bottoms the league and attempt rate besides 2019 and the beginning of 2020 before it leveled out. So there is upgrades there, but that's where, like, the run game, they were only able to run duo and inside zone, right? And they weren't even great at inside zone. And duo, you can only really run super effectively versus light boxes. So if teams, change it up, I still think they should have done it, but they just went away from that concept early on against that. So that's why you had like the Commanders and Seahawks game where you have this great rushing defense, and then other teams where it was, pretty mute.
I don't know. Do you think they even have really the guys on this team to run a different variety? Like, that's
No, they can't pull. Their guards can't pull.
Guards can't pull, and I don't really think they have the receivers out there on the field to run different kind of outside zone concepts where these guys are insert block coming back. Like, that's kind of why I weirdly want them to sign Gabe Davis, because I think he's just going to help in that regard.
Oh, if he comes on, by the way, with Gabe Davis, which this episode is not coming out for like 4 days after we record, so maybe I know there's like this like stink on him.
Yeah.
But he's a better wide receiver. I think people have the expectation of what he once was, like his starting receiver. If he's coming on a minimum deal, which maybe I'm wrong, he is a much better wide receiver 4 than Jalen Hyatt. Yeah. He's not going to take many snaps away from Slayton, but you can do some.
But you can take some snaps away from Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, I was going to say some third and long stuff where, like we talk about that Mills concept that Jaxson Dart likes a lot. It's something that Brian Dable likes a lot too, but he never really ran it with the Giants because of the quarterback and stuff. But guess what they ran in that playoff game against Kansas City where he had this forced touchdown. I think almost every single one, the touchdown he had was a Mills concept. So there is use. Now, he's not what people thought he once was. He had all these 0 catch, 0 yard games. But as a wide receiver 4, what was I talking about?
We were on, sorry, we went into the run game. You were talking about duo.
Oh, yeah, they don't have the guys to pull, and then the interior guys aren't athletic enough to run the outside zone. The outside zone stuff. So their run game is limited by the interior of the line. In fact, it was funny when Chris Hubbard started playing, he was such a bad pass protector and people wanted to play. And I was like, yeah, but he's like a legitimately good run blocker. Like we're going to have a bad pass blocker. Let him just run block for us.
Yeah. Seriously.
And we'll see how that goes. Let's now I think at the end of the day, the offseason, we never consider the fact that like injuries happen, and especially with the New York Giants, they seem to happen at pivotal spots. So we'll see, but it's the offseason. No injuries have happened at this point. Since we're talking offensive line, what do you do with the Marcus Mbow development plan? And kind of quick, because I don't know what your full analysis on him is. Like, what is your thoughts on him as a player overall, not just as a fifth round pick, but just pre-draft as a player? And then what would your development plan be for him with the Giants?
It's kind of crazy because obviously now it seems like after the fact because the Giants drafted him, but I love Marcus Mbow pre-draft, and I didn't really understand why he fell. I guess there were some concerns about injuries. I don't know. Joe Shane said after the draft that he didn't hear from other teams that they had injury concerns. I think sometimes drafts just fall weird, and there are players that do fall through the cracks, and maybe he is that player. But I had a higher grade on him than fifth round for sure. He was somebody that was in the mix for me personally at 99 and 105. That was like where I was looking to target him. And I wouldn't have even thought it was crazy to take him. I would have, I wanted Alexander when he fell, but I wouldn't have thought it was crazy to take him in round 3 personally, because he has what I'm looking for in offensive lineman. I've through the years, Bobby, I've seen a lot of offensive linemen hit and fail. And to me, one of the most important things that make you hit an offensive line is your footwork and your feet and your ability to just move as a player. And that's something that he already has. And so I saw you. I think you had like a second, third round grade on him. Was that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Again, there's a huge question with this play. Like, it's a legit, and I think I was told he has injury red flags.
Okay.
Like, the play strength is an issue, and as much as I love him as a fifth round pick, I could see him never being a good player because of that. But everything else is so good that I just feel like he can figure. Again, it reminded me of a guy from a few years ago that I really wanted the Giants to tackle.
Tom, right?
Zach Tom, and he ended up going in the bottom of the 4th round.
And now he's amazing. And it was one of the best draft hits in the 4th round in years because they understood that the most important traits for an offensive lineman are not play strength. It's important. Don't get me wrong. Like, you have a chance to fail completely if you don't have it. It's something you can also grow into. He's a young athlete, but if you don't have the feet and the ability to move, you don't have a chance. So now we get into that second part of the question, which I think is very interesting to me, because I know the Giants already said they're going to play him. They're going to start him at tackle, and that's where he's going to work to begin. And look, in their minds, they may just view this as cut and dry. Look, Jermaine Illuminor's about to hit free agency. He's going to ask for a massive deal given what these other guys got in free agency last year. We're not going to re-sign him. Bo's going to be that guy next year. It may be that cut and dry, but it gets interesting for me when you watch his tape and you think about, and you watch him on that one play where I think they have him like as almost like I don't even know what to refer to this, but he's like coming in motion around in the red zone play. And just you could see the movement skills and you're like, well, maybe he could be an actual weapon for this offense if he played center for the Giants. And that's the one that still intrigues me for Marcus Mbow. Obviously, there would be a learning curve. He talked about when he got drafted, he was training for that already. He wants to give, every NFL team every option at that point. But I look at like what did the Giants need on this offensive line? And a weapon at center is something that comes to mind. I was not a huge John Michael Schmitz fan coming into the draft. I kind of talked myself into him when they didn't take him in the first round. They got him in the second round, but I kind of regret that because I just remember not liking him on film and not liking his projection at all and feeling like he took advantage of the Big Ten, which he's not going to get to at the NFL level. I haven't been pleased or thrilled with him so far at the NFL level, though I will say I do like him more in the run game than the pass game so far through his NFL career, and I don't think the Giants have used his skill set fully. Like, I think he could be a good player on the move. So maybe that's just not something this system will have. But Marcus Mbow on the move at the center position, like at that pivot, I'm just thinking about the upside of that. So that's something in my mind for sure. But I do think he can play right tackle. So I think that's ultimately it might end up being just cut and dry. They want him at right tackle.
Yeah, my thing is, because I remember in our pre-draft O-line preview,
yeah,
I was like, I understand why the strength. It's like I can see him moving the guard with the size stuff, but I just feel like tackle might be his best position, right? Similar to Zach Tom, right, where we're talking about moving him inside and stuff, but it's like, or even moving the center, but it's like, but tackle may be his best position. So let's at least try that. And thankfully, the Giants have drafted an offensive lineman who doesn't have to play right away. Like. I know people don't like cross training. I've been someone that's for that, right? It's like if a guy's a starter, let him play the start position. The backups you can cross train a little bit. Starters play their and don't try. We don't need to cross train Josh to do that tackling guard. Let him work at own guard. Right. I've been a big every training camp. People tell me to shut up about it because of how much I talk about it. With Marcus Mbow, it should be a full on. Let's try shit out. Right. Like, I'm not saying within the same practice when they change guys' positions in practice. I hate it. I still always hate that. But let's go 3 days. Let's go a week at tackle. Let's go a week at guard. Let's do a preseason game at tackle. Let's do a preseason game at guard and see what it looks like and really try and take this 5th round pick, who, even though he was projected to go in the 3rd round, doesn't mean you need to treat him like a 5th round pick. and let's figure out what he can be, right? Don't have any plans of him playing year one. If he has to be the swing tackle, which I think he may be their best option there, then so be it. But spend this year trying to figure out what he is, and then next year is where you could put together a plan of him, either competing a tackle or guard for one of those starting spots. And I think Jermaine Eleanor, I see his tweets. He's playing the cash in next offseason. So I don't think there's an early extension coming with that unless the Giants really, really want to pay him. So we'll see. But I would try everything with Mbow, but I do agree with let's try him at tackle first because, and again, you can now at guard we talk about pulling, right? He's someone that can pull and use in the wide zone. So that I could see success at both. I could see failure at both, but I would at least try tackle first with him.
Two other questions I wanted to address on the O-line. I know we're going long on stuff, but I just need to get these out because it's O-line and everybody wants to know O-line. One, do you have any hope for Evan Neal at right guard?
No.
Okay. Why?
I think he has balance issues. I think his PFF run game grade is overrated.
Yeah.
And what has he shown in the NFL to say, oh, this will work at guard besides just being big?
Yeah, not much.
He has balance issues. He can't stay low. His footwork stinks. Again, if he's connected in pass pro against defensive tackles, will it be better than a tackle? And there's things that he'll be better at a guard, but no. I think if they thought that he could be a good guard, they would have tried it last year. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's just a last grasp. Like maybe we can, you know what I want out of Evan Neal in 2025 game. I want a 6th round pick back, and we give away a 7th round.
Yeah,
that's what I want back from Evan Neal.
Well, that's what I was going to get into next after I asked you that question. Because if that's the case, and you feel that way, I was going to ask you about the O-line numbers game, because for the first time, the Giants actually have some numbers on the O-line, and there will probably be some unexpected or just cuts that fans are going to be like, really? We cut that guy? And it's like, yeah, because we don't have the ability to keep every lineman. And we brought on John Schmelk twice for our podcast in the last 2 years. Both times he mentioned that the Giants really like Jake Kubas behind the scenes. So that's not somebody I think they wanted. And maybe they just throw him back on the practice squad. I don't know exact practice squad rules and regulations and what you can and can't do. Maybe it's that type of situation. But like I said, and you kind of just hinted at it, maybe it is a situation where Evan Neal doesn't even really make this roster this year. He gets traded, like you said, for a late round pick swap. But from a number standpoint, if you had to make an early projection now, where would you be at with this O-line? Like, who's staying, who's getting cut? We have 5 tackles, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you got your 5 starters in Thomas Runyon, JMS, Van Roten, and Illuminor.
I'll make it.
Marcus Bow's a lock. I think with the money they gave James Hudson, he's a lock, even though I think Stone Forsythe is closer, even better than him. So that's 7 right there. And if, let's say there's no trade for Evan Neal, I think he is a lock at 8. Okay. And then Jake Kubas, I think they'd pretty easily be able to revert to the practice squad. As much as, we may like him as a niche audience, I don't think he was an undrafted free agent. If a team was trying to steal him, they would have just taken him in the 7th round. Sure. And Jake Kubas was my favorite UDFA of last year's class. And then, then you would cut Stinney. I don't know. I would try and carry 9 in reality. Either keep Stinney or Schlotman coming off of the broken leg. Yeah. But the nice thing about Greg Van Roten is you can actually put him at center.
Right.
If JMS were to go down, and that's so you don't need to keep a true backup center. So Van Roten is someone I'm fine with cross training, but yeah, I don't have any hope of Evan Neal. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't. I'm not thinking about like Eric Flowers at guard, or it's just different. It's just different skill sets and different players, right?
Yeah.
Like Ken McQuarrie, one of the nice things about him was like I'm pretty confident he could be a great guard if it doesn't work at tackle. It was never really the case with Neal, even though now that I have to focus on like NFL coverage, I have thought about going and watching Evan Neal at guard film at Alabama, because I'm a lunatic. This next, let's kind of go through some of this last stuff.
Yes.
I put together 2 categories: unproven year 2 players, and then undeveloped year 3 players. So Neighbors is proven. Tyrone Tracy isn't some top 10 pack, but he's proven he can play. Tyler Nubin, Drew Phillips, Theo Johnson, Deonte Banks, and JMS. Which one do you have the most and the least faith in to be a good player?
I love that. Okay. Give me the names again. Nubin, Banks.
Nubin, Phillips, Theo, so the 2024 class, and then Banks and JMS from the 23 class.
So this is
I'm not even putting Hyatt in here.
Yeah, and that's fine. I wouldn't either. The my most pick is probably interesting. The least I probably expected, but my most pick would actually be Tyler Nubin. And I think based on the tape last year, people would be like,
I
"How could you
agree.
ever say that over Drew Phillips?" But that's how I feel about what I saw on tape. I also think that position has a much better chance of him growing into it and playing better than he did in year one. Sometimes nickel corners, like it's iffy. You'll have a good season, then you'll have a season where people are like, oh my God, he's getting burned like left and right, and like what happened to him. And I feel like corner in general is a very fickle position in the NFL. I personally am the belief of you don't draft them high with your premium capital. You just wait till they develop on another team and get them on the second contract because there's like 4 years worth of growing pains for a lot of these corners. So Newbin to me is someone who I think will benefit from having Holland. I think will benefit from having a second year in the system. And he's just going to be the main benefactor to me of having that improved defensive front and Abdul Carter on this roster. So he would be the guy for me there. And I know it wasn't a great rookie season for Newbin. Obviously, no, we expected a lot of like passes defense, some interceptions, but I thought he was good in the run game. And I thought he was just good overall from a football IQ standpoint, despite playing first year in that new system for him. So I think that's what takes the jump as he plays even faster in year two, we start to see him make plays on the football. As far as least, for me, it's JMS. Look, I hope I'm wrong on JMS. Again, we need him to be good. And I do still think the Giants don't really utilize his skill set as a mover in the run game well. But man, there are just moments in the passing game that bother me. And I just feel like his play strength isn't where I want it to be at times. I just don't know ultimately that he's going to be anything more than an average player. He came into the NFL at 24. Like, where are we, like, what more is there from a development standpoint to see? Will he benefit from continuity with GVR and with Runyon? Sure, I think anybody would, but ultimately, I'm looking at the individual player, and I'm not ultimately that excited about him.
Yeah, so I actually we did a mailbag in like February, so it was like, which after Malik Neighbors, who do you think will be the best player from the 2024 class? Not after a year, and I was like, I still think Tyler Nubin is.
Yeah.
I won't go, but I Drew Phillips. He is the he is the ultimate, like, all right, do you have a rookie season that was overrated, or are you a legit player? Now he's a damn good run defender, so there's no denying that, and that's so important as a nickel defense. So there's no question on that. But in coverage, we're talking about a guy who had 0 pass breakups, 1 interception, which again was just a lollipop Joe Flacco ball into his chest, and gave up over 80% completion percentage, right? Like Deontay Banks played over 100 coverage snaps than him. Yeah, like he was second on the team by only 8 receptions allowed. Now the yards per reception are different, but that's more of a product of the position. He's playing slot receivers, one's playing on the outside, so one's going to have more yards. So, like, there was definitely good signs for Phillips, and he had a good rookie season as a year 3, but you can't have a repeat of what he was as a rookie and we're not going to be as thrilled with him. Like, we got to start breaking up some passes, right? You don't need to have 8 pass breakups, but you got to force incompletions. And be able to make some plays in coverage, because you just didn't really see that with him. Now, run defender, we've got a good run defending nickel, no doubt about that. He's the big question. Theo there's some nice signs from him, but in reality, he just played a lot of snaps as a rookie, as a starter, right? There's no like big indication one way or the other. And Banks is a big question mark. Like, how I think his rookie season was overrated. And then that led to him being, the most hated player on the team at times outside of Daniel Jones last year. What do we become in year 3? Become something. Be a solid cornerback too. And we'll see how your future here goes. Now, if Adebo goes down, I'm really worried. So, but I like those answers.
And James
JMS, I think he's average to below average center. Right? If he gets to where
I don't want that at 55 overall.
No. But at the end of the day, like, we talk about like draft slot and expectation and stuff like that. I could see a world where JMS is getting re-signed at the end of his rookie contract, and we're not happy with where him at pick 57.
Or 57.
So, because again, like, if you're an average center in the NFL, it means you're starting for some team. So you can upgrade, right? Like Jared Wilson, the Georgia center, I was kind of all in on drafting him at 5 if he was available.
Yes.
But it's just, I don't think we're getting what I thought out of him, right? And in fact, I've learned from the JMS, and because I didn't like Joe Tippmann, and I know you liked him a lot.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? The athletic centers who fit that profile, bet on them. Bet on them. Even though you may not like some of their film, like, Creed Humphrey or whatever, bet on those guys, because they're the ones that figure it out. in the NFL. And that's why Jared Wilson, who was one of my first write-ups, so you always get more harsh of a write-up than others. I went and rewatched his tape week of the draft. And I'm like, you know what? I'm betting on this. Like I'm changing my grade on this player with the athletic profile and the fact that I'm not. Again, my first 5 players graded always get the harshest grade from me.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm like, you know what? I am changing my grade on you to, a 3rd round pick. We're at 52 minutes right now, so I want to get one last question in. So we're gonna skip the Corey Black or Thomas Fidone question. I know you wanted that. We're gonna skip biggest worry for 2025 Giants. I know you wanted to talk about that. Skattebo, dynamic.
Okay.
What do you see him being with Tyrone Tracy? Because I went into watching him thinking I wouldn't like him after watching broadcast. I'm like, there's athletic red flags, and then you watch him and you're like, yeah, but we just are fucking breaking tackles one after another.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is going to be a wax poetic type situation for me because going into the draft, and I tweeted this, there's proof of it. I said my 2 favorite values at the running back position in this draft are RJ Harvey and Cam Skattebo. RJ Harvey ended up not being a value because he went 2 rounds earlier than I
expected. Yeah, I took him in my final mock, RJ Harvey.
Yeah, and like just went way earlier than I expected him because obviously they loved his tape too, and it's clear these guys are seeing what we're seeing. But Skattebo was also that guy for me, and I knew he would fall into that range where the Giants can get him at 99 or 105 because of the 4.65 40 time that always happens. But I think you said it best when you watch the tape. The athletic limitations aren't necessarily what you expect them to be. I'll say this, Bobby. Were you surprised as much as I was how many times he wins the edge for somebody who's supposed to be not athletic? Because he won the edge a decent amount too at Arizona State, but that's not his calling card. His calling card are those jump cuts that he's really good with, that he strings together, and that helps him from a lateral agility standpoint. I think he's an amazing athlete, to be completely honest with you. So I would say that maybe he's not a 4.65, maybe he is a 4.65 guy. He's not fast. I'm not as worried about those 40-plus yard plays in the NFL. They come few and far in between. What I know is he had the second most 20-plus yard runs. He gets those doubles. He had the second, I think the most of the second most 10-plus yard runs. He had the second most forced missed tackles behind Genty. I think he has, in my opinion, he has the second best contact balance in the entire class, which is the number 1 trait I look for at the running back position. In addition to all that, I just love the fact that when I watch his tape, the receiving skills show up to me more than Tyrone Tracy. Like, I personally believe he's immediately a better receiver than Tracy. I think he's more natural. I think he works his way back to the quarterback on broken plays. I think he can run a variety of routes. He can stack defenders in the vertical game. He's got good, what's the word for it? He's got good balance as a receiver. He's good at locating the football as a receiver. Natural hands. He had, I think, the second most yards per out run in the class at the running back position. So all of those factors for me are why I like him. And I'll say this, I've been very bullish on this with Nick in our podcast. I kind of personally believe he can be the lead back for this team over Tracy. If you had to ask me gun to my head, who am I more bullish about long-term? And I love Tracy. He was another my guy. These are back-to-back my guys that the Giants luckily drafted for me to make me really happy. But I kind of have a better long-term outlook on Skattebo. I think he's a more complete player. He really carried that Arizona State offense in ways that stand out to me and potentially translate as he does it in all 3 areas. Now, obviously, he's not a perfect prospect. It's not just like the 4.65 that worries me. He is rough to watch in pass protection. Like, he looks like he has no idea what he's doing out there and was almost like
he's trying to murder people,
which is just never going to work at the NFL level.
Yeah.
It didn't work at the college level, and it's never going to work. And a coach is going to see that and be like, what the hell are you doing? Get off the field. So we have to work on that. We have to figure that out, which I hope with coaching he can. But man, I'm super bullish about his long-term outlook for us.
Yeah, it's again, there's you're not really running, the Giants don't run wide zone and stuff with him, but as a it's funny because Tyrone Tracy is receiving background. It's like Purdue didn't use him as a receiver at all. Where it's I can't even find tape on this. With Skattebo, I think it's more we're not putting him on choice routes or a ton, but it's get him the ball. That's how you get him the ball in space. It's not by running outside zone. That's how you do it. And I remember maybe you don't do this because this is a little more about getting to the corner, but I remember in 2022 when teams were just starting to play the Giants run and dropping their linebackers on their play action game. And it's they got to get to an 11 personnel and run quick game. That's the way. I understand they're not going to be the deep pat, but run quick game. And they did. And then they started running that stick concept with Saquon not as the flat, but as the swing. And that's how they were getting Saquon involved, was doing that. And that's the way you can get Skattebo where he can, make a guy miss in that play. So we've went long. So I'm just going to do a regular outro of the show. I don't have any ads to read on the outside. So we're going to say thank you, Dan, for jumping on. People go check you out, Big Blue Banter. Dan Schneier. It's still Dan Schneier NFL.
Yes.
And we'll put all the tags and stuff in the profile. Appreciate you jumping on, man. It's always fun to talk about the entire team after the draft. Am I going to see you at any training camp practices?
I hope so. It's always tough with me with my main job to get out in the middle of the day to go to training camp because I'm responsible for
Just
what
calling
pays
sick.
me.
It's okay.
Yeah, I think I'll figure it out.
Appreciate you jumping on, man. We will talk soon. So everyone have a good day. We'll see you on the next episode. Until then, let's go Big Blue.